So I guess it's, here we go again with the New York Giants, right? Welcome to the 954sports.com YouTube channel. Happy holidays. A very happy, healthy 2020 to you. From 954sports.com, I'm Matt Levine. And as a New York Giants fan, you just kind of sort of get used to coaching changes. What can you say? Giants will get a new coach in the year 2020. The old coach is now Pat Shurmur. Lasted 2 years with the Giants. Those 2 years pretty much summed up by that picture. Dreary. 9-23, the mark for Shurmur. First time around about a decade ago, right? His coaching stint in the NFL with the Cleveland Browns, a couple of years, same mark, 9 up, 23 down. 9 wins, 23 lackluster losses. A lot of losses in this 4-12 campaign that were games in which I thought the Giants could win. You know, and thinking about this, okay, with Coach Pat, I really don't have a negative bone. I think he's a good guy. No bad bones to pick on the character. I don't think he's the best head coach by any stretch. Obviously, did the New York Giants think the same or, differently, I should say. And he's out after 2 years. This guy, his predecessor, never liked him. Never thought he was a quality person. Just kind of a bum. Turned out to be 13-15 from that day forward, right? As Daily News captured it right there with the headline. Taylor made his press conference. Comes into one of the great jobs in sports in the Big Apple. And wears a suit that was big enough for William Refrigerator Perry. And kind of started thinking then maybe he's not cut out to be the Giants coach, but he had a successful first year. They were 11-5, went to the playoffs. That was the last time the Giants went to the playoffs 4 years ago. Then an abominable second year. Didn't even last the whole year. We know what happened when he benched Eli for Geno Smith. The rest is history. Spags took over as the interim coach. Then the Giants year before, went to Coach Pat for 2 seasons. When they made the move with Coach Pat, they also brought in Dave G. And Dave Gettleman, do I trust? Not really. He gets to keep his job, gets to hire the next coach. Decisions on his part, some good, some bad, some ugly. Guy to the left, Lawrence, one of the 3 draft picks you see in the first round of last year's draft, played pretty well. You know about the guy in the middle, Danny Dimes, right? I thought he was great. One problem, a turnover machine. Has to stop committing the turnovers. Everyone knows that. Do not have to be a rocket scientist to point that one out. That has to end, and you've got yourself the potential of a great football player. Baker, jury's still out. Got beat like a dead horse. For most of the season, played better at the end. Tough position in the NFL to be a lockdown corner, but he was a first-round pick. The Giants traded up for him. Those are just some of the moves that Dave G has made over the last 2 years. We can go on and on and on. So he gets a reprieve at least for the moment. Who will the Giants go to next? This guy. One of the great coaches on Bill Belichick's staff in New England, Josh McDaniel. He's had a stint as a coach about a decade ago with the Broncos. Didn't go too well. I'm not sure he would want to come to New York with Gettleman there. I would think a guy like this has learned enough from Belichick to want to call all the shots and have full reign and autonomy in a storied franchise like the Giants. This guy, I'm a fan of from what I see, Matt Rule. Right now he's prepping his Baylor Bears for the Cotton Bowl. They're ranked 7th. They'll take on the Bulldogs of Georgia later today. He said he'll maybe talk to some NFL teams afterward. Gotta think he would be on the radar for the Dallas Cowboys potentially. Right there in the backyard, right in Dallas. If Jason Garrett goes. Thing about Rule, born and raised New York City kid. Spent his high school years in Western Pennsylvania, Happy Valley, where Penn State is, and he was a walk-on at Penn State under Joe Paterno as a linebacker. Worked his way up the coaching ranks, which included a stint as an assistant coach with the Giants in their last Super Bowl run in 2011. Made quite the impression, supposedly, on the Giants, and also worked with Dave Gettleman. I don't know the relationship there. But an interesting side note that he has been with the Giants before, and it was a successful stint. So, we shall see. Maybe he, as a born and raised New York kid, has a soft spot for the Giants. Liked it the first go around, collected a Super Bowl ring, so it must have been a great year of his experience as a coach. Won on at the Temple, became the head coach there, turned around what was perennially a doormat in Philadelphia, the Temple Owls program. Got into the big time in the Big 12. Took over a program that was a sinking ship for many a reason with Baylor. Has resurrected that, like I said, on his way to the big bowl game. 7th ranked in the country with 1 loss in a dozen games. So an impressive resume. Yet to take over the reins as the head coach in the pros, but to get experience, you got to be given experience. So maybe he's the right guy. I'm not sure yet. Not sure yet. But I can tell you this. I'd like to take a chance on maybe some new blood. He's 44 years old, Rule. Someone that's fired up. You know, I thought about Coach Pat, and again, as far as character goes, I think he's a solid guy. Was not crazy about his in-game decisions at times, how he managed the clock in certain scenarios, his play calling. I thought he developed Jones pretty well this year. I'm not sure how well he used Saquon. You know, there was some good, some bad, some ugly. But, you know, in thinking about it, right, other guys who brought fire, brought passion, and brought the ability to realize that every single player had a role and that the players would go into a foxhole and give you all their blood, sweat, and tears. That's what makes a great coach. Guys like this. The great Bill Parcells. Talk about Bill Parcells more in a moment. Thought of Jeff Van Gundy. Look at him there for the Knicks, right? Remember that? In the playoffs against the Heat. And he winds up on the bottom of the scrum. He's holding on to, what was that, Alonzo Mourning's leg. Like a little puppy. On the big 7-footer's leg. Giving you everything he had for his team. And every one of his players would go into a foxhole and give their life for that coach. They'd run through a wall. Parcells had that. Van Gundy had that. All the great ones seem to have it in their own way. They get the most out of their players. Coach Pat didn't seem to have that. And at Sun Devil Stadium, they're chanting, "Ray must go." Contingent of New York fans, including yours truly. Never forget that. He lasted, as I said, 2 seasons, 14 and 18. Parcells had an awful first season in 83. 3-12-1. Weren't sure he'd make it. He did. We all know what happened after that. 9-7 in his second season in 84. 85 inches away from a Super Bowl berth, if it weren't for one of the great all-time teams in the Bears in 86. Giants win their first Super Bowl. Wins another one in 90. And Big Blue. restores their pride as an NFL champion in the modern day Super Bowl era. Those coaches got the most out of their players. You hope the Giants can get that kind of guy. It ain't easy. And I don't want to forget Coach Coughlin as well. He and Eli, of course, combined on a pair of Super Bowl titles. Oh, Eli. I know I'm talking about the Giants coaching situation, but hey, number 10. One of my favorites of all time in any sport, especially as a born and raised New York fan. To me, Eli, special. See, despite the recent turmoil in the last 4 years, still New York Giants. You still play in the Big Apple. You have some great chips, Danny Dimes. You have Saquon. You know, you can talk about Gettleman's hits and misses, but Slayton was a great draft pick, 5th, right out of Auburn. Looks like a star receiver. So, you have a lot of talent there, especially on offense. Defense has to be rebuilt. I know one thing. Giants always had defense, even with the crummiest of teams. So you've got a lot of work there on the defensive front for whoever comes in as the head coach. But the offensive pieces to the puzzle are there. Even the special teamers. Rosas had some ups and downs this season, but he was an all-pro last year and came around at the end. Dixon, you've got a great punter. So as far as offense goes, and you've got some pieces to the puzzle on the line, I would like to see more from Hernandez. Solder, I don't know what happens. Maybe you shift him from the left side to the right side. You know, Remmers is going to be gone. Center, Jalapio, shame, injured yesterday in the finale. Maybe out all of next year. So on the offensive line, you've got potential there to fix it real good in the draft too, because you've got the 4th overall pick. So it'll be interesting to see where the Giants go with that. And you get one of those guys that Gettleman calls a hog molly. So you've got a lot to sell a potential coach on in coming in. You know, the talk also that coach may not want to come in because they don't want to work with Dave G. I don't buy that. Talk about Parcells, right? And I remember him having to come in and, you know, manage to work with George Young. And that's the old model. You had the GM, you had the coach. I still think that could work, despite the model that Belichick has created and a lot of suitors have followed. Not all successful, but I still think it's the New York Giants. I mentioned all the chips they have to sell, all the pros. And I think if it's a con working with Gettleman, it gets outweighed by the pros. So that's how I see it. So again, we'll see who becomes the head coach of the New York Giants. But this isn't the first time that the New York Giants have gone through this, right? Now, I vaguely remember as a youngin' hearing about the Ali Sherman era. And the Giants, after Ali Sherman was ushered out with the song I always heard by Goodbye Ali, right? Chants. You had 4 straight coaches, starting with Alex Webster from 1969 through Ray Perkins. I remember well as a kid. In 1982, they were all under 500 till the tuna Parcells came in 1983. So the Giants have gone through lean times. But we live in a world right now that is win now. And, 2 years is about the expiration date. That's all the shelf life you get. So the Giants find themselves hitting the reset button going into 2020. For now, Dave G stays. A lot of talent, as I mentioned. Rebuild that defense. See what kind of coach we get in. And you hope that the coach has some pep in his step and the players follow. It'll be interesting. But what I'm hoping for is the Giants get a coaching legend to stroll the sidelines for Big Blue because it's been a while since we've had a winner. So with that said, all you can do is remain optimistic for 2020. We'll see what happens with the Giants coaching situation. I'm Matt Levine saying so long. Have yourself a great new year. Happy, healthy again in 2020. Catch you back next year to talk more about the Giants and that coaching situation.